Shabbat Shalom. This week's Parsha is Kedoshim. We love this Parsha. You know, for so many weeks, we've been dealing with the intricacies of the worship in the ancient temple, the worship in the wandering tabernacle, how the animals were sacrificed, how the Kohen would approach the altar. Great detail and something difficult for us as modern people to relate to. Now, all of a sudden, in the midst of the sea of technical jargon about how you worship God, how you sacrifice and which sacrifices are made, we suddenly have a section that deals only in the ethical. It's called Kedoshim. It means holiness. And it has that famous line, love your neighbor as yourself, which some of the rabbis said is the fundamental teaching of all of Judaism. In this Parsha Kedoshim, we have laws that talk about leaving the edges of your field for the poor, to make sure that they have food. Leave the gleaning that falls to the ground for the poor and the stranger, making it even easier for them to be able to gather food during the harvest so that they will have food during the winter. We read about that in the story of Ruth. Then we have laws that talk about do not defraud your fellow man, something that has been a major crisis in our economy over the last decade. So much fraud that has really actually left senior citizens without any of the retirement that they had hoped for, they expected, because the funds that they had saved over all those years were stolen from them through fraud. Do not delay a person's pay. When somebody has a paycheck due, that money belongs to them. If we delay it, it's like theft. It's their money. It's the payday. So pay people on time. Give them dignity, and also, it's their money. They worked for it. They earned it. They deserve that respect. Do not take advantage of the deaf or the blind. In other words, don't take advantage of people with disabilities. And we see so much of that in the world today, in which people, poor, children, women who are single women, who perhaps are unable to function within the economy because there's so many disadvantages that are placed before them, so many difficulties placed before them. And outside of our democracy and other parts of the world where these women are taken advantage of in the worst ways, the Torah says don't take advantage of people in the lower rung of your society or people who have a situation that lends itself to abuse. And of course, as we said before, love your neighbor as yourself. This island of ethics in the midst of all this ritual teaches us a very important lesson. The purpose of ritual is to lead us to the ethical. The rabbis said, they asked the question, why did God give us all these mitzvot, all these commandments? And one of the answers they give is, ha-mitzvot lo nitnu ela l'tzaref et habriot. The commandments were not given except for the reason of refining us as human beings, making us better human beings. In other words, the whole purpose of the ritual is to sensitize us to the needs of others. So in the book of Leviticus, which is a book of ritual, suddenly this gem right in the middle, Kedoshim, the ethical laws, and we think it's out of place, then we realize, as the rabbis teach, it's not out of place, it's exactly where it's supposed to be. Because the rabbis never wanted to separate the ritual from the ethic. They wanted them to go hand in hand. Religious observance needs to lead to ethical behavior. If it doesn't, the religious observance has no meaning. It has no substance to it. It is only a means to an end, the end being ethical behavior, the end being, and love your neighbor, take care of your neighbor, treat your neighbor as you would have your neighbor treat you. This is the lesson of Kedoshim. And suddenly we realize what all the ritual is about in the book of Leviticus. It was to sensitize us and prepare us for a discipline that leads to these incredible ethical teachings that we find in this Parsha, known as the Parsha of Holiness. Atem tiyuli mamlechet kohanim. You shall become a kingdom of priests and a goy kadosh, a holy nation. Kedoshim, a goy kadosh, a holy nation. What is the holiness of our nation? The holiness of our nation is the ethical teachings found in this parsha that is so appropriately referred to as the Parsha of Holiness. The Parsha that exemplifies the ethical and moral teachings of the 5 books of Moses. Shabbat Shalom.